Hey, how's everyone doing? This is the fourth episode of Blue Collar Philosophy. I'm recording in my car yet again because because I got inspiration again, and I have to record it. So I want to preface this by saying that if you are going through like a hard time, like emotionally, and like you're really in the thick of it, I might recommend just not listening to this video right now. Like I don't say anything mean. However, it might not be the best time to listen to it because it might come across like I'm downplaying suffering or pain or whatever. But I'm really not. So if you are having a hard time, maybe watch this later. I also want to preface this by saying a lot of this stuff is going to sound like philosophy from Eastern religions, which it is. But it's concepts found in the Bible as well. But the Bible is also was written and compiled in the Near East, so it makes sense. So what I wanted to talk about today is kind of like the paradoxical nature of reality and how to, I guess, handle it. So in the Bible, you have what's called wisdom literature. And the one that's familiar to most people is called Proverbs. So it's purportedly written by Solomon. And it's a lot of stuff like, if you get up early and work or something, you'll be prosperous. But if you basically drink and sleep, then you'll be thrown into poverty. It's stuff like that. It is wisdom, but it's a lot of common sense. I think it's a good thing to follow for like principles for your life. It's not 100% as we'll see, but it's a good thing to kind of conduct your life by. But we also have things in the Bible like the Psalms, which are, they're literally poems and songs to be sung. But we have things in the songs called laments. And there's a lot of them. It comprises about a third of the songs. But if I had to summarize laments, it would be, God, where are you? Why aren't you doing anything? Or why did you allow this to happen? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? That's basically like the gist of it. And it's in the Bible. And then you have the book of Job. And if you don't know the premise of the book of Job, they have a scene where it's God in his throne room, and he's surrounded by his angels. And then one of them comes forward because they're talking about Job. And God basically says, look at my servant Job, he's blameless, blah, blah, blah. So this figure comes forward, and he's referred to as Satan, but Satan isn't a proper name, it's a title. That really isn't important. But the Satan figure comes forward and he says, well, he only acts good because you bless him. If things were taken away from him, then he would curse you. That's basically what he says. So God agrees to allow that to happen, and then he basically loses everything. He loses his family, all his money, and it's a tragedy. And then Job's friends come. God, it's raining pretty hard. So Job's friends come, and they go with him back and forth. And they're almost kind of speaking kind of straight out of Proverbs. Almost. They said, Job, you must have done something to earn this, because that's just how the world works, right? So in the Bible, it doesn't talk about karma. It more talks about fruit or wages, right? So if you do certain actions, you reap the fruits of that, right? Or if you do something, you reap the wages of it, right? So his friends are going back and forth with him. But we already know from the premise that Job is blameless because it says Job was blameless. So, Job goes around and around with his friends, and he finally demands an answer from God. And what God said is really curious because he doesn't explain why it happened. He goes into this long monologue about these two, what we would call mythical creatures, Leviathan, and I forgot what the other thing was. And you're kind of like, what? What does that have to do with anything? But the answer that God gave was, it wasn't giving him a direct answer. It was telling him you couldn't possibly know. It's not for you to understand. You have no idea about the complexities of reality. At least that's what I take from it. So here you have the wisdom literature, which says if you do right, you basically will reap the rewards of it. And then you have the book of Job and laments over here. And over here, it seems that bad things happen to people that don't deserve it. All right? So these seem like they seemingly contradict, right? And there's a good reason for it. It's because they do contradict. But before you get mad at me for saying the Bible contradicts, and before you spike the football because I say the Bible contradicts, I'm just going to ask you a simple question. And the question is, do you self-sabotage? Now, you don't have to answer because I know you do, because we all do. But just think about that. Bring up an instance in your mind where you know you self-sabotaged. All right? Did you want to experience something? Yes. Did your actions do everything to make sure that didn't happen, that you didn't get to experience? Yes. Were both true? Yes. Did they contradict? Yes. They're both true. They're not mutually exclusive. I know it's strange to think about, but think about this. So let's say you're hungry, right? This hand represents you being hungry, experiencing being hungry. And this is you eating. You're experiencing eating and the satisfaction of being full. And they seem like two separate things, but they're actually one. They're part of the same experience. You're experiencing all of that. Another way to put it would, let's say hypothetically you lived in a world and there was only light. It was light all the time. So put yourself in that situation. What if somebody tried to describe light to you? It wouldn't make any sense, right? Because there's no differentiation, there's no contrast. You wouldn't know what light was because that's all you experience. But if you experience darkness, then you would understand what light actually is. So hold on one second. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, and I just decided to pause the video rather than go, So anyway, but you can see, like, some people call it duality. They do in Eastern religions. But I think the typical way we think about it is paradoxical, okay? And what is the thing about a paradox? It contradicts, but they're both true. Can you understand a paradox? No, you can't. You can be aware of it, you can accept it, but you can't understand it. You can know that's how things are, but you can't understand it. And you really shouldn't drive yourself crazy trying to understand a paradox. So, because there's a difference between understanding and knowing, right? So we can understand things in the world, right? But we can't, like in the grand scheme of things, we can't understand it. Whatever you want to put in the quotation marks, we can't understand it. It's beyond comprehension. It's not meant for us to understand. And I'll kind of give another example, right? So I have 3 boys. I can look at one of my boys and I can try to understand his behavior. And I've gotten pretty good at it. I kind of know what makes him tick. And I kind of know how to navigate their behavior to best help them, right? That's something I understand. But I also love my sons. And there's no thought involved in that. I just know it. And if I even try to put thought into it and try to explain to you why I love my sons, I couldn't. There's a difference between understanding and knowing. And that's what we get confused. We try to understand things that we can't understand because they are paradoxical and they're beyond words, and language doesn't do it any justice. But our minds want to make sense of it. And it's like, well, I can understand this, I can understand anything. And I think this is what's causing a lot of our anxiety. And I think a lot of it is, I want to say this in a charitable way. So science is great, right? It's bettered our lives. That's like not even debatable. But there's this assumption from people within the scientific community that given enough time, we will understand everything. We will finally get the answers that connect this, and that, and that, and that, and then we'll just understand. But that's not true. Okay? So I'll give one more example and then I'll end this because this is getting a bit long. So we all know there's something called math, and we know that black holes are real. Well, apparently, inside a black hole, math breaks down. It no longer exists. I mean, that's a paradox like within itself. But they're both true. But they somehow contradict each other. You're not going to understand it. And you're not meant to. And if you can't understand it, stop trying to understand it. That's basically it. Because if you try to understand it, you can't enjoy it. So just stop. I mean, there are things that you can understand. I mean, I'm a habitually curious person. I like to research things all the time. But there's just certain things that I know I've ran into in my life I can't understand. But man, did I try. But all it does is put more wrinkles on my face, probably. But I don't know if there's like a really practical application to this other than maybe mental and just maybe just taking stress off your mind. That would probably be about it. That would probably be the practical application of it. But anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope everyone is doing well.